All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let us begin by thanking our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Sivan, Naftali, and Chavi Tilson from Eretz Yisrael for dedicating all the Shirim and Droshos this month in honor of Naftali's Chaver, Benjamin Wall, who introduced him to the Daf. May Hashem bless us to finish the Daf Yomi cycle together and celebrate with Asim together in Eretz Yisrael. Amen. To thank Baruch Meir and Rina Dubin, may Hashem continue to protect our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, and may all of our children remain safe and complete their year of learning with a deep connection to the land and to Hashem's Torah. Amen. To thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Alan and Sherry Steinmetz, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Alan's mother, Chaya Bas Reb Meir, and to thank Jeff and Debbie Schwartz for dedicating the Week of Learning for a successful procedure and complete recovery for Jeff. He should just have a refuah. I'll say with that, let us begin. So we are picking up today. Today's daf is Mem Dalet 44, and we are picking up in Miras Hashem. We left off in the middle of our, well, not in the middle, but towards the end of the Mishnah. We left off B'chol Yom Haisa Kveda. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17 lines up from the bottom, almost right across from Tosas Amar Rav Yehuda. So we'll say, so remember again, the Mishnah is contrasting the avoda that occurred every day with the avoda of Yom Kippur. So specifically now contrasting some of the utensils which were used. So the Mishnah said, B'chol Yom Haisa Kveda. Every day the shovel that was used was a heavy shovel. V'hayom Kala. But today, meaning Yom Kippur, the shovel was made of lighter weight material. B'chol Yom Haisa Yada Kitzara. Every day the handle of the shovel was short. V'hayom Aruka. Today in Yom Kippur, the handle of the shovel was longer. Again, we'll discuss why all these things were like this. B'chol Yom Haisa Zahav Yaruk. Every day they would use yellow gold. V'hayom Adom. And today it was red gold. Divrei Rabbi Menachem. These words are Rabbi Menachem. B'chol Yom Makriv Pras B'Shachris Upras Ben Arbayim. Every morning they would go ahead and for the Ketores, offer up part of it in the morning and part of it in the evening. V'hayom Mosif Melo Chafnav. And in the morning, or I should say today, Yom Kippur, they added on an extra handful of Ketores. So we'll say, remember again, it's actually very interesting that when we speak about the Ketores service of Yom Kippur, so we often refer to the Ketores service which was done inside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, inside the Holy of Holies. But of course, Yom Kippur, like every other day, also had the regular Ketores service. Part of it offered up in the morning, part of it offered up in the afternoon. B'chol Yom Haisa Daka. Every day the Ketores was finely ground. V'hayom Daka min Daka. Today Yom Kippur, finest of the fine, right? Even finer. B'chol Yom Kohanim Olam Mizrach Shal Kevesh. V'yardim Aravo. Every day, both say the Kohanim would go up on the eastern side of the ramp of the Mizbeach and would come down on the western side. V'hayom Kohen Gadol Ola Be'emsa V'yar Be'emsa. And today, Yom Kippur, Kohen Gadol goes up the middle and comes down the middle. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, the Olam Kohen Gadol Ola Be'emsa V'yar Be'emsa. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, always the Kohen Gadol always goes up the middle and comes down the middle. B'chol Yom Kohen Gadol Mekadish Yadav V'raglav Min HaKiyur. Every day the Kohen Gadol would go ahead and wash his hands and feet. Kiddush Adayim V'raglayim. Minak from the kiyur. Remember again, the kiyur was the large wash base. Remember again, also we saw Ben Katan. What did he do? What did Ben Katan do? 12 spouts. Excellent. V'ayom minak kiton shel zav. But today in Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol washed his hands and feet from a golden utensil, literally a golden pitcher. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Kohen Gadol always washes his hands and feet from a golden pitcher. B'chol Yom Hayasham Arba Ma'arachos. This is very interesting. On a regular day, there were 4 pyres on the top of the Mizbeach. Right? Remember again, now this is the outer altar, the Mizbeach HaChitzon, the altar used for animal sacrifice. On a regular day, there were 4 fires on the Ma'aracha. V'hayom Chamish. But the day in Yom Kippur, there were 5. Div Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi Omer B'chol Yom Shalosh. Rabbi Yossi says, no, on a regular day there were 3 fires on the top of them, or 3 pyres, I should say, on top of the Mizbeach. V'hayom Arba. Today Yom Kippur there were 4. Rabbi Yehuda Omer B'chol Yom Shtayim. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, on a regular day there were 2. V'hayom Shalosh. And today in Yom Kippur there were 3. Good, we'll delve into each of these things. Says the Gemara, Ayv ha'ksiv v'chol adam lo yeh ba'or hamoed. So we'll say, so remember again, the Gemara now picks up on the first statement of the Mishnah. So remember again, the way the Mishnah started out was the Kohen Gadol shechts his par, right? And then receives the blood in a mizrak, in a bowl. And then the Mishnah said he gives it to a guy. Remember again, what was the guy? What was the Kohen's job? The bowl receiver? To stir it, right? To mix it, to make sure that it would not congeal. Now I will say now, remember again, so the mixer stands on the Rovat Haravi'i, which literally is like sounds like the fourth column of stones, or the fourth row of stones. The Gemara presupposes that the mixer is standing inside of the Heichal, standing inside of the Mikdash itself. So the Gemara says, one second, how could the stir be standing inside of the Mikdash? After all, the Pasuk says, V'chol adam lo yeh ba'ol moed. No one is supposed to be in the Mikdash. When I say the Mikdash, I mean the structure right now. The Ulam / Heichal, when the Kohen is doing the Avodah. And here, the Kohen is doing the Avodah. So how could the stir be standing in the Mikdash? To which the Gemara says, Yehuda, Tani shal Heichal. It doesn't mean the fourth row of stones inside of the Mikdash, but rather ultimately, again, it means outside of the Heichal. So just to show you what this means is, if you look at your Beis HaMikdash, and hopefully we're going to have a full size of this in Eretz Hashem soon, we'll say, where is the stir standing? If you notice, there are steps when you go into the Heichal. So we'll say, if you count 4 steps out of the Heichal, which is 1, 2, 3, there are 3 little ones, and then the 4th one is a larger platform. That is, it's not numbered. Actually, the truth is, it's right actually by the letter Lamed Daled. If you look right by the letter Lamed Daled is positioned right at the 4th step outside of the entranceway of the Ulam. That is where the stirrer would stand. That's where the stirrer would stand. And in fact, we're going to see, that's where Halacha L'Maisa, the Kohen Gadol would put down, remember, because the other piece we saw is that the Kohen Gadol would take the coals for the Ketars from the top of the Mizbeach, he'd take it on the shovel, and then he would put the shovel down also by the Rovat Haravi. Everything, so the stir and the shovel is being placed down by the 4th step outside of the Heichal. So pretty much right where it says Lamed Daled, although we're going to see the stir didn't stand in the middle. In fact, the stir stood really to the side. Well, we'll clarify that in just a little bit. But that's where all of this is taking place. So therefore, again, the stir, is not standing inside of the Mikdash when the Kohen Gadol is there, but rather, again, he's standing on the 4th step, outside of the actual temple structure. Good, so it says the Gemara, Amri Yehuda Tani Shal Heichal, Tan Rabbanon. So now that the Gemara mentioned this, we're going to spend some time focusing on this idea. So we'll say one of the interesting aspects of the Yom Kippur service is that no one is permitted to be inside of the Mikdash. We'll say, remember again, when we speak about the Mikdash, we're referring to this structure over here. This large rectangle is called the Ulam, the antechamber, and this larger rectangle is called the Heichal. No, we're going to discuss where no one is permitted to be, but for now, what the Torah tells us is, whenever the Kohen Gadol is doing something inside of the Mikdash, no one is allowed to be there. No one is allowed to be present inside. Says the Gemara, no one is permitted to be in the Ohel Moed, in the Mikdash, when the Kohen Gadol is doing the Avodah. Top of Mem Dalid, Yochel Afilu Ba'azara. Now, we'll say, you might have thought that maybe this applies to the Azara as well. Maybe it applies to the courtyard. And maybe we're supposed to remember again, now also there are 2 courtyards, right? There is what we call the Ezras Kohanim and the Ezras Yisrael. Again, we don't have to get into these technicalities now, but you might have thought that no one is even permitted to be in the courtyard of the Mikdash. Talmud Lomar, Ba'oel Moed. Therefore, again, the Torah says, no, you can't be in the Oel Moed. So, Imi Ella, Ba'oel Moed Sheba Midbar. So ultimately, again, I only know about the Oel Moed. I will say, now, Oel Moed, in general, whenever we see Oel Moed, we always take that to mean Mishkan, Beis HaMikdash, but really Oel Moed specifically refers to the Mishkan in the desert, in the Midbar. So I only know that during Yom Kippur, during the Avodah of Yom Kippur, no one could be in the Mishkan in the Midbar. Shiloh, Ubeis Almin Minayin. How do I know that this halacha applies when the Mishkan stood in Shiloh for 369 years? And then ultimately, again, the Beis HaMikdash as well. Talmud Lomar, Bakodesh. Therefore, I will say the Torah, it says Bakodesh. So since it says Bakodesh, when the Kohen is in the Kodesh, no one else is permitted to be inside of the Kodesh. Rabbi say Kodesh is a much more expansive term than Oel Moed, whereas Oel Moed could really specifically refer to the Mishkan in the Midbar. Kodesh refers to the Beis Hamikdash in general. Eini ela b'shas haktorah. So I'll say furthermore, I only know that this is true during the time of the Ketores. When the Kohen Gadol is offering up the Ketores, no one is permitted to be inside of the Mikdash. B'shas matan dabin minayin, how do I know that it also applies to any of the blood applications? So say whenever so essentially, it's really whenever the Kohen Gadol, not just the Ketores, whenever he's doing any of the blood applications that are unique to Yom Kippur, right? Unique to Yom Kippur. So for example, the blood application of the Seir LaHashem, the blood application of the Par. How do I know that when the Kohen is doing any of these things, no one is permitted to be in the Mikdash? Talmud Lomar, biva'o lechaper. Therefore, also Zohar says, ultimately, again, when you come to be mechaper, so anything that has an element of kapara, whenever the Kohen Gadol is doing something that has an element of kapara, no one else is permitted to go ahead and be inside of the Mikdash. Eini ela b'chnisaso. I only know that's true, furthermore, when the Kohen Gadol is going in. Be it si'asa minayin. How do I know that it even applies as he's going out? Talmud Lomar, I'd say so. So we'll say whether he's going in, whether he's coming out, no one is permitted to be in the Mikdash when the Kohen Gadol is going in, coming out, staying there for any element of the kapara of Yom Kippur. Says the Gemara, V'chiper ba'ado v'ad beiso ba'ad kol kal Yisrael. But this references back to something we learned yesterday. The Kohen Gadol will atone on behalf of himself, on behalf of his beiso, his family, u'ba'ad kol kahal Yisrael, and on behalf, ultimately, again, of all of Klal Yisrael. To which the Gemara says, Kaparaso kodemas lekaparas beiso. The Kohen Gadol's atonement must precede the atonement of his family. So the Gemara says, "Uba'ad kol kahali." I'm sorry. Kaparas kodemas lekaparas beiso. Kaparas beiso kodemas lekaparas echav kohanim. The atonement for his own immediate family must precede the atonement for his fellow kohanim. The kaparas echav hakohanim. And atonement for the Kohanim, kodemes lekaparas kol kahal Yisrael, precedes the kapara for all of Klal Yisrael. Both say this reference is back to what we just learned in Reb Tzaddik. Right? Before the Kohen Gadol could go ahead and start atoning for anyone, who does he have to atone for first? Himself. So both say it's incredible. The Kohen Gadol represents Am Yisrael on this Day of Atonement. And Chosh Baruch Hu says, listen, before you start atoning for everyone else, take care of yourself. And after you take care of yourself, get your mishpacha in order. And after you get your mishpacha in order, get your immediate landsmen in order, your kohanim. And then, once you've gotten your own self in order, your family in order, and again, your fellow kohanim in order, then you could be mechaper for Klal Yisrael. I was saying an incredible yisod. You know, sometimes we're so eager to change the world that we forget that the necessary first step is to change ourselves. So it could be that the Kohen Gadol is so desperate to bring kapara upon all of Klal Yisrael. That's incredible. First step is be mechaper upon yourself. That's step number one. Then your mishpacha, then your fellow kohanim, and then if you go through those steps, indeed you will be successful in bringing kapara on all of Klal Yisrael. An incredible yisod. Amar Mar, tzidkas hatzadik. Exactly tzidkas hatzadik. Amar Mar, ainli ela b'shas haktorah. So I will say, remember you said before that I only know this to be true during the time of the Ketores. My mashma. Now, why would you assume that it's only during the time of the Ketores? So the Gemara says, "My mashma." Amar Rava v'chein Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimi v'chein Rabbi Elazar Amar Kra v'chiper ba'ado u'ba'ad beiso ba'ad kol kahal Yisrael. Kohen Gadol will atone for himself, for his family, and for all of Klal Yisrael. Ezuhu kapara sheshavala u'lebeisol echav hakanim l'kol Klal Yisrael. I will say, what is the one thing that affects kapara for everyone? It affects kapara for everyone in the same way. It's very interesting. Have Omer zu haktoras hakitoras. So we'll say, interestingly enough, kitoras seems to be the one thing that is able to affect uniform atonement. And the Gemara says, ukitoras mechaperes. That's interesting, because is kitoras really a mechaper? In other words, we'll say kitoras is an avoda. Is it really, where do we see that ketoras is a mechaper? It atones. Both say this is beautiful. In Datane B'chanina, labmanu sheketoras mechaperes. And both say we know that ketoras is mechaper. Now, where do we ever see that ketoras is mechaper as an avoda? They both say, interestingly enough, when the Torah gives out ketoras in the context of Yom Kippur, the word kapara is not really used. The kapara is used with the par, the kapara is used with the soyer, but kapara is not really used with ketoras. So ultimately, again, where do we know about the kapara prowess, so the kapara power of Ketores, to which the Gemara says, Vayiten es ha-Ketores vayichaper ala'am. But say, this is incredible. Where do we see it? This is by Korach, right? This is incredible that in the aftermath of the rebellion of Korach, there was a plague, right? There was a plague that killed a bunch of people. So the Torah says that during the plague, when the Malach HaMavos was walking around, so Aaron took the Ketores, and when he walked Bein HaMesim, that brought the plague to an end. So you see from the episode with Korach that Ketores has the ability to end a magefa, to end the plague, which tells you that Ketores has the ability to be mechaper, which is really incredible. So the kapara power of Ketores is actually not learned out from Yom Kippur, it's learned out from Parshas Korach. Incredible. We'll say, listen to how beautiful this is. V'tanu derei Yishmael, al ma Ketores mechaperes. We'll say, what is Ketores mechaper for? Al lashon hara. Incredible. I will say the real power of Ketores is that's mechaper for lashon hara, which I will say makes sense once you appreciate the context from which the kapara power is learned from. Right? Remember again, if I accept the Gemara's premise that the atonement power of Ketores is learned from Korach, the whole chit of Korach was one of lashon hara. Again, it was rooted in many different things, but lamaisa, right? It was gaiva, it was taiva, but at the end of the day, it was lashon hara. So Ketores is mechaper on lashon hara. They will say, now, what's the connection? This is so beautiful. Yavo davar shebechashai v'yechaper al maisa chashai. Let something that is done in quiet and private be mechaper for something that is done quietly and privately. See, I will say, so listen to this. Ketores is done quietly and privately. In other words, it's done out of public view. It's done inside of the mikdash and no one sees it. Now it's true on Yom Kippur, it's done even more privately inside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But even stam on a regular day, right? Ketores in general is a more private service done out of the watchful eye, right? When you offered up karbanos on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, that was very public. But Ketores is something done privately, so let something done privately be mechaper on something that is done privately. Lashon Hara, in the good old days of Lashon Hara, before social media, so remember, Lashon Hara was private. It was private, right? You spoke, good old Lashon Hara was just behind people's backs, right? And they never knew where it was coming from. Now Lashon Hara, Baruch Hashem, is in the Rosh Hashanah, right? Now it's very public, which is, I will say, such a Yeridas Hadoros, because it shows, once upon a time, it was embarrassing to speak. We all did it, but it was embarrassing. It's right. Who doesn't speak Lashon Hara? Okay, but at least I'm not going to publicize it. Now there's no shame in it, right? Now again, Lashon Hara is a public pursuit. In any event, the Gemara says as follows: Tanan Hasam, Parsha will say. So now let's analyze a bit more this idea of prisha. So we'll say what we've established is there is a concept, a biblical concept, lo yeh adam ba'oal moed, that when the Kohen Gadol is doing the avoda, no one could be inside of the mikdash. And apparently, anytime he's doing something that is kapara related, no one could be there. I both say, so what's kapara related? Well, pretty much now it sounds like everything, right? So it's Ketores, it's certainly the blood applications of the dam and the sayir. Now I both say, interestingly enough, the shaila is going to be, how far out do you have to go? In other words, now that we've established that when the Kohen Gadol, also, which is actually interesting, so it sounds like the only thing that happens inside of the mikdash, sounds like, that doesn't have a kapara element is what? Think on it just a moment. The only thing that may not have a kapara element is the menorah. And I guess the placement of the lechem upon also, but that's only done once a week. Okay, so interesting, maybe the menorah. But again, everything else, certainly has an element of kapara associated with it. All right, so the Gemara says, so now the shaila is going to be, how far out do you have to separate? So listen to this. So Tanan Hasam, Parshin mi beina ulam v'la mizbeach b'shas haktara. At the time the Ketores is offered, about saying, not only can you not be inside of the mikdash, but you also cannot be between the ulam and the mizbeach. So we'll say, so remember again, now that what we're doing over here is we are extending, we'll call it the what's the right word? The boundary, the separation radius, right? Or the isolation radius. So we'll say, so now what we're assuming right now, although we're going to challenge this assertion in just a moment, is that the ulam and the heichal are treated the same. So whenever the Kohen Gadol is doing the avoda, you must separate out. Again, the ulam is gimel, the heichal is beis, right? So whenever the Kohen Gadol is doing anything inside of the mikdash, Kohanim, everybody must separate. Now the Gemara is suggesting, Abosai, that not only do you have to separate from the mikdash, but this area over here, between the ulam and the mizbeach, this area, this strip over here, right? Here's the mizbeach achitzon, here's the ulam, that when there is an obligation of separation from the mikdash, you must not be in the mikdash itself, but in this area as well. So says the Gemara, let's analyze. So Tanan Hasam Parshmi Beina Ulam Mizbeach B'Shas Haktara. When the Ketaris is being offered, not only can you not be in the mikdash itself, but you cannot be between the Mizbeach and the Ulam as well. That's only true when the Kohen Gadol is offering up the Ketoris and Heichal. Remember again, as we just established in the Mishnah, on Yom Kippur, there are two different Ketoris offerings. There is the daily Ketoris offering. Where is the daily Ketoris offering done? Where is it done? Inside of the Kodesh, by the Mizbeach, which we'll say is by letter Beis on that sheet, right? Ultimately, again, by the inner golden altar, the small golden altar, the Mizbeach Hazav. So the Gemara is suggesting over here, and then of course on Yom Kippur, there is the additional Ketoris offering, which is done inside where? Of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, inside the Holy of Holies. So the Gemara, Rabbi Lazar is saying, when do we say that halacha l'maisa, there's an obligation to separate from the mikdash and from the area between the mizbeach and the heichal? That's and the ulam, that's only during the ketores offering that takes place on the golden mizbeach. So only when ketores is being offered up in the heichal do you have to separate not only out of the mikdash but also from the strip between the mizbeach and the ulam. Ava b'shas haktar d'lefnai v'lifnim. But when the Kohen Gadol is offering up the Ketoras inside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, inside the Holy of Holies, then what? So the Gemara says, Aval Heicha, Aval B'Shas Haktar D'Lefnai V'Lifnim, Meheicha Parshi, Mebeina Ulam V'Lemizbeach Lo Parshi. But Shabbos said, this is actually very interesting. Shabbos Lazar says like this, where essentially, you always require 1 degree of separation, which is pretty much what Rabbi Lazar is saying. So when the Ketoris is being offered up inside of the Kodesh, inside of the Heichal, which is the daily Ketoris, which is being offered up on the gold altar, that's when you have to ultimately, again, be outside of the strip. You cannot be in the strip between the Mizbeach and the Ulam. But when the Ketoris is being offered up in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the 1 degree of separation just demands that what? You can't be in the mikdash, but there's no problem to be in the strip over here, between the ulam and the mizbeach. So we'll say, this is the position of Rabbi Lazar. Again, the separation requires essentially 1 degree of separation. So when the ketaris is being offered up in the heichal, you cannot be in the strip between the mizbeach and the ulam. But when the ketaris is being offered up in the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, then halacha l'maisa again, you can't be in the heichal, but you can be in the strip between the ulam and the mizbeach. Incredible. So says the Gemara, Masir Ravad Bar Ava v'Amri Leikidi Rabbi Yossi Omer. So we'll say Ravad Bar Ava. Others are attributed to someone else. Rabbi Yossi says, Kishem sheparshim mebeina ulam v'la mizbeach b'shas haktara kach parshim b'shas matan par koin mashiach upar helam davar b'shel tzibor usir avodas kachalmer. We'll say, so now it comes on Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, the same way that we separate out from between the ulam and the mizbeach at the time of the Ketoras, so too we go ahead and we also separate out from that strip between the Mizbeach and the Ulam by other services as well. For example, I both say the blood applications of the par koin Mashiach, the par helam davar shel tzibor, and the Sir Vadas Khan. Both say, if you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, B'shas matan par koin Mashiach, habo al achas mikol ha-mitzvos, sheta baras atzavos. Say, if the kohen makes a mistaken ruling that only he followed, right? In other words, he didn't paskin around, he paskin mistakenly for himself, and as a result, he commits an aveira. There is a specific offering that's called the specific part that's offered. Sirei Vodas Kochavim. Both sides, the situation where the Beis Din, the Sanhedrin, rendered an erroneous ruling, and as a result, Klal Yisrael worshipped Avodah Zarah. And Sirei Vodas Kochavim. So both say, so again, in all of these situations, halacha l'maisa, Rabbi Yossi is saying is you can't be in the strip in between the ulam and the mizbeach. Rabbi Yossi says the Gemara, ha ma maila yesh ben heichal ben ulam v'mizbeach. Why is there a maila about that strip between the ulam and the mizbeach? Ela shebeheichal parshin bein b'shas haktara bein shelo b'shas haktara. Because we'll say what comes out is as follows: that from the ulam, any time, or I should say from the heichal, anytime there's something happening in the heichal, everyone needs to be out. Right? Anyone needs to be out. Look at Rashi. Bein b'shas haktara, kasaka daite, bein b'shas haktara d'lifnai v'lifnim, bein shelo b'shas haktara d'lifnai v'lifnim, ela b'shas matan dam l'fnai v'lifnim. So we'll say, whenever there's something happening inside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, whether, again, it is blood applications or whether it's ketores, halacha l'maisa, everyone needs to be out. However, mibena ulam v'lam mizbeach, from the heichal, from between the ulam and the mizbeach, ultimately, again, in parshin ela b'shas haktara. So we'll say the Gemara wants to make the following distinction. Morning. I'll say the following distinction. So halacha l'maisa, again, when there's anything happening inside of the heichal, when there's something happening inside of the heichal, whether blood applications or ketoris, you have to be out. But ultimately, again, from the heichal. But for the area between the ulam and the mizbeach, halacha l'maisa, the only time you have to be out is for ketoris. So the Gemara now is making a distinction between ketoras and blood applications. It's only for ketoras that you must vacate the strip in between the ulam and the mizbeach. So the Gemara says, "B'shas haktara mia parshi." At the time the ketoras is being offered, you have to vacate. My love. Now both say, now of course, so that's fine. So now, according to this approach of Rabbi Yossi, I must vacate the strip between the ulam and the mizbeach at the time for ketoras. I will say, but now what's the shaila? Which ketoras are you referring to? Remember again, there are two ketoras, right? There's ketoras of the Kodesh HaKadosh and there's ketoras of the Heichal. So the Gemara says, my love, b'shas haktara, d'fnai v'lifnim. Are you not referring to ultimately, again, the ketoras that's being offered up in the Kodesh HaKadoshim? And even when it's being offered up in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you must vacate the strip in between the ulam and the mizbeach. To which the Gemara says, "Lo b'shas haktara de heichal." No, not necessarily. So referring to the ketoras of the heichal, right? Not so the daily ketoras. So I will say. So essentially, again, the Gemara is suggesting this: all you ever require is one degree of separation. So if the ketoras is being offered up lifnai v'lifnim in the kodesh hakadoshim, you just can't be in the heichal, but you can be in the strip between the ulam and the mizbeach. But if ketoras is being offered up in the heichal, you must vacate the strip in between the ulam and the mizbeach as well. Ihaki, if that's the case. Ma maila. If that's the case, and the Gemara says, what's the maila? V'sulo, would this be the only difference? Ha ika ha maila. The ilu mehecha parshi bein b'shas haktara didei bein b'shas haktara d'lifnai v'lifnim the ilu mibena ulam v'lemizbeach lo parshi ela b'shas haktara deheichol. Ultimately, I will say there's a fundamental distinction that ultimately, again, when it comes to the heichal itself, we go ahead and vacate it no matter what's happening. But for ultimately, again, the strip for the mizbeach, the strip between the mizbeach and the heichal, we are only going ahead and vacating it when the actual ketoras of the heichal is being offered up. To which the Gemara says, "Hakatani ela shebeheichal parshin bein b'shas haktara bein shlo b'shas haktara." But the Gemara says, but it says that for the heichal, ultimately again we vacate the heichal whether the ketoras is being offered up or not being offered up. When between the strip between the ulam and the mizbeach, amid beis, ein parshin ela amid beis ela b'shas haktara. Only at the time that the ketoras is being offered up. But there is another distinction. Parshi bein bikdusha didei bein bikdusha dilifnai v'lifnim. Both said there is another fundamental distinction. One is vacating the heichal whenever there's a blood application, whether that blood application is done in the heichal or the blood application is done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, right? Anytime that there is a matan damin, anytime there is a blood application, we are vacating the heichal. V'ilu mibeina ulam v'lam mizbeach, yet Rabbi say, interestingly enough, when it comes to vacating the strip in between the ulam and the mizbeach, lo parshi ela bikdusha de heichal. You only have to vacate the strip between the ulam and the mizbeach when there's an avoda happening inside of the heichal itself. Says the Gemara, Amarava, Shem Prisha Achasi. It's all called, right? It's all called, or as I will say, the Gemara suggested on a certain level, we call this all one Prisha. We call this all one separation. The fact that there is a distinguishing detail over here between are you vacating the heichal or are you vacating the heichal and the strip is a detail. But for a halachic purpose, The Gemara says we call this all one thing. We call this prisha. Amar mar kach parshin. I'm sorry. Amar Hashem prisha achasi. Amar mar kach parshin. This is how we separate. This is how we vacate the area. B'shas matan par koin mashiach upar helam davar shal tzibor usiri avodas kochavim. So I'll say. So remember again. We said before the example the Gemara brought is this din of vacating the area is not just the din on Yom Kippur. As much as we're introducing it over here on Yom Kippur, it's not just Yom Kippur. It seems to be any time that we are essentially engaging in some type of kapara service. There is an obligation to vacate the space. So, for example, the Gemara says the par kohen Mashiach. We spoke about that before. That's halacha l'naisa again. The case where the kohen acts on his own erroneous halachic ruling and commits an avera. Par helam davar shal tzibor. That's ultimately again where the Sanhedrin issues an erroneous ruling and Klal Yisrael ends up committing an avera, and sirei avodas kochavim, situation where again the Klal worshipped avodah zara. So even in these situations, there is an obligation to vacate the area when the avodah is being done. Minalan, where do we know that from? Amrei Pedas, Asya kapara miyom kippurim. Both make a gzer shabav kapara from Yom Kippur. It says kapara by Yom Kippur. It says kapara by these elements. Just like the kapara of Yom Kippur requires a vacating of the space, so too the kapara of these karbanos requires a vacating of the space as well. Amar Rav Acha bar Ava shmamina. See from here that malos daraisa v'hachi gemir lehu. The Rabbi say, interestingly enough, if you look at Rashi says malos daraisa malos shamanu chachamim b'mishnah mesechus kelim parakam. Suppose listen to this. The Gemara down here references the Mishnah Maseches Kalim. Now, what does the Mishnah in Kalim say? Quotes over here, reading Rashi. The Kamar Hasam, Harabayis Mikulish Mirushalayim. So we'll say the Mishnah in Maseches Kalim quotes eight gradations or 8 levels of Kiddusha. For example, Harabayis is holier than Yerushalayim. V'hachel meharabayis, right? The chel, which is the strip which surrounds the Beis Hamikdash. The chel has greater Kiddusha than the rest of the Harabayis. The Ezras Noshim min Achel, right? The Ezras Noshim has greater Kedusha than the Chel. The Ezras Yisrael Mishal Noshim. Ezras Yisrael has greater Kedusha than Ezras Noshim. V'shal Kohanim Mishal Yisrael. Ubeina Ulam v'lamizbeach min ha'azara. Furthermore again, the strip in between the Ulam and the Mizbeach has greater sanctity than the rest of the courtyard. V'heichal mi beina Ulam. Right, the Eichel is greater Kedusha than the Ulam, so the Gemara says all of these things, these levels are Da'oraisa. So I just want to point out, remember, this whole notion of vacating the Mikdash, and then again, in certain situations, not only do you have to vacate the Mikdash, but you have to vacate the strip in between the Mizbeach and the Ulam, tells us that the different areas in the Mikdash have different levels of Kedusha. Now that's not a chiddush to us. What the Gemara is just pointing out is, by the way, these varying levels of Kiddusha are biblical in nature. This is Da'oraisa. So just finish up Rashi. Rashi says over here, all of these gradations are Da'oraisa ninhu halacha leMoshe misinai. These differing levels of Kiddusha are Da'oraisa, not written as a pasuk in the Torah, but are a Sinaitic law. Halacha leMoshe misinai. V'achi gemir lo hilchach le'inyan prisha nami dikra lo itzrich prisha ele mehechal d'chsiv v'chal adam lo yeba amoid v'asra abanam v'gazra ben olam ezbeach dilma mikri v'aya lehechal v'lo nimshecha sharazar la'osa gzera shay ben olam ezbeach kiddusha achasi. So I'll say, interestingly enough, so the Gemara is pointing out over here as follows. We're going to see in just a moment, we'll read this in Rashi first, then we'll see in the Gemara. Mid'oraisa, the mitzvah of prisha, the mitzvah to separate, right, to vacate the area, really only applies to the Heichal. But sometimes Chazal added on the need to vacate the space between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. For what purpose? Out of fear that if people kind of remained in that space, they may come inadvertently to enter into the Mikdash itself. So the Gemara says, "Ushala kol azar kedusha achos so ben ulam mizbeach gufa gzeira." Probably as azara gzeira legzeira. So okay, so fine. So the Torah says, let's go back to the Gemara. So the Gemara says, "Shmamina malos da'oraisa." You see from here that the varying levels of kedusha of the Mikdash compound are da'oraisa. V'achi gemir lehu. Because if you would think that the varying levels of kedusha in the Mikdash are just Rabbanan, Maishna beina ulam la mizbeach. Rabbi will say, what's the difference between the area between the ulam and the mizbeach and the rest of the azar, the rest of the courtyard? Dilma mikri va'ayo mikula azar. Nami nefreshu Because we'll say, if you hold that all the levels of the mikdash, all the areas of the mikdash are the same, so if you're concerned that if a person is standing between the ulam and the mizbeach, that they may come to enter into the mikdash, maybe we should just say like what? Maybe you should have to vacate what? The entire Beis HaMikdash premises. Everything. Vacate, right? Stand on Harabayas. Leave the Beis HaMikdash premises. The factor will say that we only extend the gzeira of vacating the area to the strip between the mizbeach and the ulam indicates to us what? That strip has a different level of kedusha. Because, as in the Milas Daraisa, the levels of kedusha in the mikdash are biblical in nature. So that when Chazal are telling us to vacate the area, they make a distinction between the strip, between the Mizbeach and the Ulam, to the rest of the Azar, to the rest of the courtyard. Because if that was not so, then if Chazal are concerned about you inadvertently entering into the Kodesh, when the Kohen Gadol is doing the Avodah, they should tell you to vacate the entire area. To which the Gemara says, Dilma mikru ba'alamida olam Mizbeach. To which the Gemara says, the Kevan de lo mafsik midi lo minkara milsa. Hazara, Kevan Diika, Mizbeach Achitzon, the Mafsik, Minkra Milsa. To which the Gemara says, well, not necessarily, but there is a distinction, because the area between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, there is a concern of inadvertent entry. Why is there a concern of inadvertent entry between the Ulam and the Mizbeach? I will say why. Because there's nothing that really obstructs you from walking in. When you are on the other side of that, remember again, if you are on the other side of the Mizbeach, there's something pretty big obstructing entry, which is what? The Mizbeach. That is kind of their obstructing general entry, so a person doesn't just end up inadvertently wandering in to the mikdash itself. So I'm Rav Shmamina, Kedushas Ulam Kedushas Ulam Vehechol Chada Milsi. We'll say this is actually quite fascinating. The Gemara says something else. Rava says, but you see something else, by the way, that the Kedusha of the Hechal and the Ulam are really one and the same. We'll say, remember again, we've got our Hechal, and our ulam. So Rava just says, you see from here, in this whole discussion about say, what do you see? That there's no distinction between the ulam and echal. So Rava say, see, if I was structuring this Gemara, as all of us, you would have thought to say that what are the levels of separation? Well, level one is you can't be in the hechal, but you can be in the ulam. Level two is you can't be in the ulam, but you could be in the strip, right? In the strip between the Mizbeach and the Ulam. And level 3 is you can't even be in the strip. But if you notice, again, throughout this entire conversation, no distinction is made between the Heichal and the Ulam, right? The Heichal and the Ulam, which tells us that Halacha L'maaseh Rava says that the level of Kedusha of both of these items is the same. So the Gemara says, because if you would think that the Ulam and the Heichal are two different Kedushos, then Ulam Gufei Gezerah, Venekum Venigzar Gezerah Legezerah. See, Rabbi said, because remember, this is incredible. If the Ulam was a separate Kedusha than the Heichal, then Rabbi said, what would that mean? That would mean like this. When there is an obligation of separation, right, of the separation, you can't be in the Heichal, but you can be in the Ulam. And now what? Chazal are going to say, now not only can you not be in the Ulam, but you have to be in the strip, and now not only can you be in the strip, but you have to be out, you have to vacate the strip. That's too many gzeros. So the fact that essentially we treat this entire area of the Ulam and Heichal like one Kedusha indicates to us that in the Milas, right, in the biblical Milas, in the biblical gradations of Kedusha, there is no distinction between the Ulam and the Heichal. To which the Gemara says,
does that mean that generally people just walked in?
Not people, Kohanim. Remember, it's an important point I will say, when we're speaking about the din of vacating the area, this is Kohanim. Yisraelim, remember, and even Leviim, are never entering into this area, right? The most they can do is maybe fill up parts of this courtyard. So when we speak about, thank you for the clarification, when we speak about vacating the premises, we're speaking about Kohanim, who normally would have license to be in the Ulam and the Heichal, cannot be there when any part of the Kapara surface is taking place. To which the Gemara says, Lo, to which the Gemara says, Lo, Ulam ubeina Ulam, v'lam is be'achad kedushahi, Heichal v'Ulam shtei kedushas. To which the Gemara says, it's not true. In fact, the area between the area of the Ulam and Bein Ulam is actually, this is actually interesting. The Gemara says, the area of the Ulam and the strip between the Mizbeach and the Ulam, that's one Kedusha. But the area between the Ulam and the Heichal, in fact, is another level of Kedusha. So therefore, I will say, it turns out that the areas of Kedusha go like this. There's the area, really it's the area of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, right? That's level 1. Level 2 is the rest of the Heichal. Level 3 is the Ulam and the strip in between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. That's really level 3. And then ultimately, again, the rest of this courtyard, the Ezras Kohanim, then the Ezras Nashim, so on and so forth. Rabbosai, before we go weiter, what's ta'alacha with this obligation of separation? Right, Rabbosai, this is a big discussion. So now what we've established through this sugya is the need to vacate the premises at the time that the Kohen Gadol is doing the avoda inside of the mikdash. We've also established what type of avoda does it apply to? What type of avoda? Kapara avoda. Right? Anything that has an element of kapara, of atonement associated with it, no one is permitted to be in the mikdash when halach l'maisa the Kohen Gadol is doing his thing. Not even doing his thing. Doing the avoda. Now the shaila then becomes, how much do you have to vacate? So listen to this. So the Rambam, this is actually brought down. Let me read. First, there's the halacha of. Okay, let me read to you. This is brought down in 2 places in the Rambam. It's brought down in Hilchos Avodos Yom Kippurim, Perek Dalet Halacha Beis, and Hilchos Temidin Umusafin, Perek Gimel Halacha Gimel. Let me read to you first from Rambam Hilchos Yom Kippurim. B'shas haktaras hakitoras bekodesh hakadashim. At the time when the Kohen Gadol is offering up the kitoras in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Kol ha'am parshim min ha'heichal bilvad. Kol ha'am. Now, we'll say again, Kol ha'am means the entire nation, but who does it really refer to? Kohanim. The Kohanim cannot be in the heichal. You can't be in the heichal at the time that the Kohen Gadol is doing the kitoras inside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. However, ve'enan parshim min beina ulam v'lam mizbeach. But they need not separate from the strip between the ulam and the zeh. So also I want to point out as follows. So essentially, when the Kohen Gadol is doing the avoda in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you cannot be in the heichal. Cannot be in the heichal, but you can be in the strip in between the mizbeach and the ulam. That you could be in that area. Why, says the Rambam? Shein parshin mi beina ulam v'lam mizbeach, because the only time you have to vacate the strip between the ulam and the mizbeach is Ella b'shas haktara behechal b'chol yom or b'shas matan damen behechal k'mo shvarna b'hilchos. So both say essentially the way the Rambam Paskins is there is only 1 degree of separation that is necessary for atonement services. So when the Kohen is doing the kitoras in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the 1 degree of separation demands that what? You can't be in the heichal, but you can be in the strip in between the Mizbeach and the Ulam. However, when the Kohen Gadol is doing the Ketoras in the Heichal, when he's doing the Ketoras in the Heichal, or for that matter again, any of the blood applications of Yom Kippur in the Heichal, it's not just Yom Kippur, by the way, any time you're doing blood applications, let's say the Bar Helam Davar Minat Sibor, the Karbonos we spoke about, then Halacha L'maisa, you cannot go ahead and be in the strip. So essentially, I will say, when atonement is happening in the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you can't be in the Heichal. But when atonement is happening in the Heichal, not only can you not be in the Heichal, but what? You can't be in the strip in between the Ulam and the Mizbeach as well. So always 1 degree of separation, one barrier, 1 degree of separation required from wherever the atonement service is happening. And the Rambam writes the same thing in Hilchos Temidin Musaf and Perek Gimel Halacha Gimel. Both say that was Hilchos Avodos Yom Kippurim Dalid Beis. You should look at these Rambams because they're really quite fascinating. And now again, Rambam, same idea. Hilchos Temidin Musaf and Gimel Be'eshem Aktir Naktoris Beheichal. At the time that the Ketoris is offered up in the Heichal, B'chol Yom Vayom, Parshin Kala Am Min HaHeichal, U'mibein Ha'ulam V'lam Mizbeach, Lo Yesham Adam Ad Sheyeti Zeh Sheiktir HaKetoris, V'chei B'shas Shikanis B'dam HaChatos, Nasas B'fnim, Parshim Mikol Mibein Ha'ulam V'lam Mizbeach. So we'll say again, whenever there's an atonement service happening inside of the Heichal, you have to separate not only out of the Heichal, but you must vacate the strip in between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. But when the atonement service is only happening inside of the Holy of Holies, Kodesh HaKadoshim, you must vacate the Heichal, but ultimately, again, you could be in this Shabbat. So we'll have to stop over here for today. Shkeach, I will say again, incredible sugya. Now at least we know the halacha of Hafrasha, and Amir will continue with the rest of the sugya tomorrow. Shkoyach. Okay. Thank you. It's not. It's fine. You can get by with the.
What do you mean the strip between the ulam and the